device. It's in the stomach of your dead cellmate. You better hurry up. Live or die. Make your choice.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam and welcome back to my road to Saw 10, where I'll be covering every Saw movie in honor of Saw 10, coming to theaters September 29th. I've already covered Saw 1, 2, and 3, playlist link in the eye in the right-hand corner, do go check that out. But now it is time to talk about Saw 4. This would be the last one until Spiral, directed by Darren Lynn Bousman. I incorrectly said that Saw 4 was the first one to not have any involvement from Leigh Whannell, James Wan, or Darren Lynn Bousman. I was wrong. Turns out this was Darren Lynn Bousman's last anything Saw related until Spiral. So that's on me, my bad. But to talk about Saw 4, I needed to get the guy who created the awesome intro for this entire series and is played in front of every video. He is 1/3 of the Small Talk podcast here on this channel. It's Jacob Collins from 3D Movie Cinema. Jacob Collins, how are you?
Well, I'm great. I am doing pretty good for the most part. I had to, Ryan begged me, pleaded with me, got on his knees and said, please come on Saw 4. And I said, no. And then he says, I'll pay you. And I said, no. Then he says, I'll let you. He says, I'll put Ryan's full of shit all over my social media page. I was like, all right, I'll do it.
The things I do for this channel, but yeah. Small Talk drops every Tuesday here on this channel. I have so much fun doing it, even though I repeatedly am told that I am full of caca. So there is that. But it allows me the chance to watch Smallville, which has become sort of like something I look forward to watching every week, and I've just grown to love over time. And I think by this time, and Jacob, you're more well-versed in Saw lore than I am, but I think around this time, the Saw movies have really ingrained themselves to the point where I believe some of the marketing at that point was like, it's that time of year again, and they were just releasing one Saw movie a Halloween, every year. I believe it was around this time, right?
Yeah. In fact, this year, because I sent you the video for Saw 3, but I said, we better use it for Saw 4, because I forgot about it. Then you're like, it's better use it for this video, because at that point, Saw 4 had come out, was in theaters, and they had this thing every year called it on Spike TV, which is now the Paramount Network, which they called the Scream Awards, and where they would honor upcoming movies, and they would honor horror films. It's basically an award show for horror films. And so basically, they had at the beginning of the Scream Awards, they had Saw 3 trap of where the ribs open up and splatter. And so they had Jigsaw on the which Togo Price wrote for the sketch, whatever. And for the Scream Awards, you have to scream in this man's life, and had a stunt actor and blew his guts up, and all the blood went all over the audience. The Kids' Choice Award, but for adults. And so, but blood for blood, so it's line. And so that was and so at that point, Saw had become this big horror franchise, because after 3 movies, you're a franchise.
Hello, my name is Jigsaw. I want to play a game. You have spent your lives seeking out images of terror and gore. Your thirst for blood is insatiable. Therefore, I have selected one of your own. This audience member has spent his life enjoying carnage. So now I want to see how much you enjoy the real thing. There are 10 seconds on the clock. If you are silent during that time, you will spare this fan's life. But if you make any noise, the device will be triggered, and he will be disemboweled before your very eyes. Make your choice now. Let there be blood.
From the Red Theater in Los Angeles, this is Spike TV's Scream 2007.
Yeah, pretty much. And the days when award shows were fun and not just futile looks into the mouth of madness that they are today. But that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. This deep into the Saw series, I was not expecting to be as invested as I was, because like Saw 1, I already loved. Saw 2, I thought was underrated. Saw 3 was the beginning of the Uncharted Waters, and I thought that one was very good. It was like, all right, as soon as we get into like 4, 5, 6, I'm like, okay, these are when it's going to get tough. But to be completely honest, I don't hate Saw 4. I don't think it's better than 1 or 2, but I put it on equal quality with 3. It's not perfect by any means, but I think there's an admirable job of trying to connect everything, and I like how they tied up the whole thing with Detective Matthews, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I feel like it's a good connection of introducing new stuff and tying off old stuff.
I always see Saw 2, 3, and 4 as Darren Lynn Bousman's trilogy. Because 1 is James Wan's movie completely. 2, 3, and 4 are Darren Lynn Bousman's trilogy. And even though it sets up, like 5, it really is like, because he said it's like you said, the Detective Matthews trilogy. It's like, and then finally we get, if you think about it, we're in Saw 2, we're introduced to Eric Matthews. His name is Eric Matthews, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm just calling him Detective Matthews. Donnie Wahlberg, that's who he is. But
because I'm just thinking of Boy Meets World, Eric Matthews. Boy Meets World. I'm just like, I said Eric Matthews, like, oh yeah, his name is Eric Matthews, just like Will Friedle's character in Boy Meets World. I just realized that.
Someone get Mr. Feeney. Shout out to William. Shout out to William Daniels. But yeah, that's interesting because, Darren Lynn Bousman, he did direct 3 Saw movies, and then he would go on to do Spiral, the Chris Rock one, which we'll definitely be covering. And spoiler alert, Jacob Collins will be coming back to talk about Spiral, just a heads up. But yeah, Darren Lynn Bousman, maybe outside of Wan and Winnell, he's like the guy, like the Saw guy. Like he's the one who is routinely tied with this series. I can't remember him directing anything else.
He directed Repo, the Genetic Opera.
That was a thing?
Yes, it was, and it was for Lionsgate too. Like literally, if you watch the Saw 4 DVD commentary, he's literally talking about, I'm doing Repo, the Genetic Opera next. I'm doing Repo, the Genetic Opera. Lionsgate said, if I did Saw, finish, I said, I'm doing Saw 4. They asked if I could do Saw 5, but I'm like, Repo, the Genetic Opera. And literally, they were advertising it on the DVD of Saw 5 Repo from the director of Saw 2, 3, and 4. Repo, the Genetic Opera. Paris Hilton is one of the Paris Hilton's in it. So is Marilyn Manson and Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Carmen from Spy Kids.
That's so early to mid 2000s. It's not even funny. Does she say that's hot in the movie at all?
Paris Hilton is not really the star of the movie. The star of the movie is Carmen from Spy Kids and Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And the plot is he owes a company money, and so he ends up having to go and kill people, and he sings about it and takes their heart out. And his daughter is like, like, it's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but his daughter is ashamed of what he's doing, and she discovers what he's doing, and he also sings about it, and she sings, and there's even like a thing where she says "fuck you" to Dad. She sings called "Fuck You." I said "fuck you." It's a crazy freaking movie. It's kind of shitty, but like, it's a fun watch thing. I'm saying one day you have to check Repo, the Genetic Opera out. Ironically, a couple years later, they had a movie called Repo Man with a similar premise starring Jude Law.
I gotta check out Repo, the Genetic Opera now, or I believe that's the title of it. But I think the biggest thing to address with Saw 4 is that this is, I want to assume, the first movie in a post-Jigsaw world, because John Kramer is dead, but we see him so much in like flashbacks and like archival stuff that you kind of forget. But this is like the first one in which, well, John Kramer is technically dead. And so it's interesting how they work around that. I wasn't able to find if Tobin Bell was done doing these movies. I mean, clearly he wasn't. He came back, but it just would have been interesting to see if they made a conscious decision to kill him off, and then they're like, oh crap, now we got to figure out a way to bring him back.
I think because James Wan, when they were writing, James Wan, Lee Winnell, who created Saw, they wrote Saw. Lee Winnell wrote 1, 2, and 3. With Darren Lauren Bosman and Lee Winnell wrote 2 together because originally it was supposed to be a different movie, and then Lee Winnell kind of Sawrized it. And then James Wan and Darren Lauren, not James Wan, Lee Winnell co-wrote the movie together because they wanted to end the Saw series. They thought this was like, oh man, we could end like wrap up our our first movie, plus we can also do kind of fill in like the stuff that Darren like Darren, I think he helped out too. I mean, even though he's not credited, I think he also helped contribute to the third film as well. But I think mostly it was like more of an uncredited basis. But like it's mostly Darren and like it's mostly Lee Winnell and James Wan's script that they wrote. They're working on Dead Silence.
But we learn more about Jigsaw and John Kramer more in this movie than in any other, and we meet his ex-wife Jill Tuck. I wanted to ask you, like, what's your opinion on her? I wish they kind of did more with her. I mean, she's John Kramer's ex-wife, so I mean, she's got that going for her. But I don't know. I guess I was expecting maybe they had more to do with her. Maybe she carries on Jigsaw's legacy, and she kind of does, but I don't know. I don't think they really kind of did. I feel like that might have been a wasted opportunity.
Well, I guess my aunt was watching this all for me. She goes, "Is she involved? Is she the killer?" Because like it says, his work will continue. And so my aunt watched Saw 1 through 4 with me, and she was like, is he the killer? He has to be the killer." And I was like, she has to be the killer. There's no way his wife's not. Like I did not know anything, and I'm like, I feel like you could say she is kind of involved, but she's not really. She's more of a hands-off approach. So I would say that her as a character, she's really just bland to me. It's like, oh yeah, she's in this movie. I really don't care about her character until the very last movie. That's when I actually care. And then that's when I'm like, oh, okay, now it's more interesting, especially if you see the last 10 minutes of the movie. I'm like, that's very interesting. But then, like, as for really the rest of it, I mean, like, I think she's just especially this movie, she's just there to set up backstory to Jigsaw.
Yeah, because I feel like with the whole storyline of she was pregnant and she lost the baby, and that had a role to play in John Kramer starting down it started his villain arc, if you will. I feel like there might have been some juice left to squeeze in that. And I feel like I don't want to say it was retcon, but I feel like it's almost forgotten in later entries because as of this recording, I've watched all the way up to Jigsaw, and you almost forget that John Kramer was about to be a dad by the time this whole thing started.
Yeah. Like, have you noticed though, they haven't even they didn't even really mention it in Saw 2. Like Saw 2, they're like, oh, we got in a car accident, and that was it. And that's what kind of, and then like I feel like we already got his backstory in Saw 2. Do we really need another backstory to the backstory?
Or just more layers to said backstory.
Yeah. Well, I will say the reason I'm not upset with it is because James Wan and Lee Winnell kind of put this in there in Saw 3. Like she's in Saw 3. Like she has like a 10-second cameo in Saw 3, like when Jigsaw's getting the operation, he remembers his wife. So I'm like, so there is that. So I'm like, I can't say that's against what they were creating. But then again, like it feels like this, like it feels like that I didn't really care for the backstory at all in Saw 4. I'm like, to me, the best focus of the movie is on the SWAT commander.
Yeah, that's a good place as any to parlay into talking about Rig. I actually like this character, and I wanted to see him make it out of it. I wish they could have. Well, spoiler alert, I guess he doesn't make it out. I wish they could have done like more with him. I mean, Matthews meets a pretty bitter end, so maybe have him be the new Matthews, sort of, kinda. I don't know. Maybe it's just me being a wishful thinker, but I liked him. I liked his story arc of he tries to save everyone even though he can't, and all the traps are designed by Jigsaw to like say, you can either save this person or you can choose to ignore it and move on. And he just can't do it. It's really tough. It's a tough choice for him, and I liked the drama involved in that, I guess.
I like that the twist of the movies are that the idea of this movie is this is not your trap. You're not involved in this. You want to be involved, but really it's mostly he's supposed to be a spectator. He's not supposed to be involved. And when he is, like there's things like, okay, Jigsaw's like with the prostitute. the madam or whatever, the pimp or whatever you call her. It's like this was not your trap. This is her trap. And then basically it's like, you want to be involved in this trap? Okay, watch this. Okay, there's a knife under there. You have to just kill him or else he's gonna put you in prison. Like, that's literally as much trap. Or he's like, okay, yeah, you want to be in the rapist's trap? Okay, watch this. You have to abduct him and put him in there. It's just like the only way he's like literally any of these traps are made is either you're meant to either set up the trap or you're meant to face the consequences post the trap. Like, there's never ever really, like, for instance, I love whenever he walks into like the school and there's the pedophile teacher that, you know, he's there and like, you know, like, and that trap's already been played because it's like this, it's like the idea is this is not, none of these traps are meant for you. These are all meant for these people. You're just there because this is basically showing you, like, is this the life you really want to embrace? You know, I feel like, don't you feel like that? I have a question. Do you feel like the arrow that went through the woman's face that was like taking pictures? Remember when they're at the school and the arrow said, look out, and the arrow shot the woman in the face and be like, not the, you know, the woman taking picture, the forensics lady.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Do you feel like that was made for Riggs?
Oh, I never considered that.
Or is that Rick? Rick, it's not Rick. This is Rick.
Well, considering like your theory suggests how Rig is meant to be a spectator and not actually like participating, it's hard to say. That it's a good theory. I'll lend credence to it. I just have to give it more thought, I guess.
I was thinking it's just meant to slow him down because, and also there are issues in this movie. I do have too, because it's like he says go home. Jigsaw leaves clues everywhere, but he says go home, and then he somehow figures it out to go to the right location. And I was like, how is that? I couldn't even figure that out because of logos on a fucking knife.
I mean, he is a detective, so he's a police officer of some kind, so I guess you got to use deduction. But yeah, even still, like, even I could, like, I had an inkling of what was going on.
I would have went home because at least I said go home. I'm gonna go home, but I think that's what Jigsaw was trying to do, like, go home. You completed your journey. Now it's time, you know. But instead, it's like, what about? We're getting too far back on it. But I'm saying, what did you think though about the beginning of the movie? You know, like, did you really think that this is like, oh, okay, now we're picking up where Saw 4 is? Did you really like it, or did you be like, oh god, we're seeing Jigsaw's dead body and stuff? I don't need to see this.
You know, one of the things that I've liked about these movies is that their adherence to the continuity and trying to make it all work kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. I'm sorry, that's a very apropos one, but you know, it works.
You get it? Jigsaw, you get it? Even
Yeah.
God's going, you get it?
Insert the Robin Williams clip here, but yeah. But at the same time, like I said, I just admire how it all kind of fits together into one big puzzle. And you might not get it initially, but the movies fall over themselves to try and make it all connect. I have seen worse modern like trilogies and series that
Lots
are
of
just,
continuity issues, like X-Men.
yeah, it is like continuity, schmontinuity, who cares? It is like I read a Letterboxd review, I believe, to this movie where it's like you have to have an engineer's master's degree in order to follow this story, which is rather extensive, but I kind of understand because, like I said, nothing random happens and everything happens for a reason. So you might not get it immediately, but it's not like nothing really goes to waste. That opening scene, it circles back to Hoffman and that whole thing, which we'll talk about in a second. So I didn't mind it.
I also like that, you know, it starts out like we see, like, I will say, like, you know, the trap at the beginning with the blind guy, like that, I was like, they're not even trying this, but I kind of got angry when I first saw the trap. I'm like, they're not even trying. This is easy. I could do this trap. This is not that hard. It's just like literally, it's like stay not even in his eyes. It's just literally stitched over his skin right here. I'm like, I could do that trap. That's an easy trap. Like, that's not even a trap.
Yeah, and it also kind of says what I was talking about in my Saw 3 review, is that I feel like the traps are just happening just because they have to happen, because that's kind of the draw of some of these movies, which I understand. But at the same time, I guess I just got involved in who's going to take over for Jigsaw, and I got involved in that. So sue me. But at a certain point, I was like, like, and some of the traps are narratively like they're connected. So I'm not doing a blanket statement of the traps don't matter. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that the opening one with the two dudes in the mausoleum, at first I was like, what's the point of this? And I feel like it does connect, but just feel like they are just taking a la-di-da kind of approach to the trap. So like just throw some weird like gory crap on there. People will buy it.
I do like how the beginning of the movie is the end of the movie.
I did like that too.
You're expecting it to be like, okay, this is what happens, but then we don't realize that we're thinking, okay, all this shit is happening after Saw 3, when really this is happening right as Saw 3, once it goes, like, if you notice, like, there was something clever transitioning that Darren Lynn Bousman did where it just goes to a shiny mausoleum, meaning like this is literally like, like have you noticed, I don't know if you noticed, but the picture quality kind of is dimmer at the beginning, but then it brightens up. Like,
yeah, I did know.
Kind of like a transition, like, hey, we're a day before.
Yeah, I did notice that, and it's crazy to think that these movies are not exactly happening before or after, but during. So Jigsaw's got multiple things going on all at once. So like one thing's happening, but then another thing's happening. And like I said, you won't get it right away, but it's eventually going to just sync up into where you're like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. But I guess good place as any, unless you wanted to bring something else up to talk about Hoffman. Now, I was actually texting you before we recorded this that as these movies get deeper, I was not a huge Hoffman guy. I feel like the Jigsaw heir should have been Amanda, but I'm just not a big fan of this character. I feel like he was doing it more out of spite than anything else. I mean, his first victim is literally, and this happens in the next movie, so kind of a spoiler, but his literal first victim is the guy who killed his sister, which, I mean, I can kind of understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, Jigsaw, like John Kramer, also came from it with a place of where he wanted to show where people were going wrong. He had extreme ways of doing it, which I don't agree with, but it came from a place of like guidance rather than just blind vengeance. And I feel like that was Hoffman's downfall, and I feel like that's where they were going with Amanda, but that's obviously
James Wan decided to kill Amanda.
Yeah, which is sad, but it is what it is. So
Hoffman's in Saw 3. He's in Saw 3 just for a cameo, and he said he didn't even have a name. He said he just did this, like, hey, we need you to do this one movie, and then hey, we need you to come back for Saw 4, and then he came back, and they're like, you're gonna be in Saw 5, then Saw 5, and then Saw 6, and Saw 7. And he became kind of the face of the franchise for like onward. After 5, you're like, oh wow, this guy literally is. I'm like, and this is rare in Hollywood because usually they would get bigger name actors. This guy literally was like an unknown actor who I think only did a Denzel Washington movie called Virtuosity. Yeah, he did that with Denzel Washington, and he only has a small role in the movie. But then this movie, like, he kind of took his career off because now it's like, like that movie really, he got to play Hoffman in like Saw like 3 through 7. I mean, that's a pretty freaking big thing. I mean, that dude was collecting paychecks, and he got to play like a bad guy who was like the good guy. Like, obviously, yes, spoilers. Hoffman was the big reveal at the end of he's the Jigsaw. Yeah. But I think that is clever though that you see that, like, that because did you ever think who'd you think was the killer personally when you're watching this? You couldn't tell who it was. You're like, who'd you think personally? You're like,
I had a feeling it might have been Stahl because Stahl is another introduction in this, or not Stahl, Strom, excuse me, Strom.
The guy from Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, I thought I was thinking they were leaning more that way. If they wanted to go super crazy with it, it'd be like it would have been Rig all along, which would have made no sense. But I figured they would be stupid enough to do this, but they actually didn't, which I admire. But yeah,
my aunt figured it out like in Saw 3.
I'm sure
because she figured out because there's a scene where Hoffman is listening to them, like they're talking where Rick and where and the what's her name? The redheaded woman, Karen.
Yeah.
They're talking, and then you can hear Hoffman's listening to them, like, and so they're like, it doesn't make sense how this could, and so you can hear, and she goes, I bet he's in on this. I bet he's in on this because, like, why is he listening like that? He's just like, And then she's like, and then we're watching Saw 4. She goes, I bet he's in on it. And then she's like, I knew it. I freaking knew it. I'm like, wow, that was foreshadowing in Saw 3 that you figured that out. I'm like, I didn't figure that out when I first saw it. I'm like, I didn't know. I was like, who's this guy in Saw 4?
She's a regular Hercule Poirot.
And so I watched it. So I'm watching this, and I will say I like that Donnie Wahlberg's in this movie, but he has nothing to do in this movie except to sit there. He has nothing to do.
He has like 3 or 4 scenes, and most of them are him hanging by a chain while sitting on top of an ice block. Like, I felt bad for the guy, and reenacting Natalie Portman's scenes in V for Vendetta, and making friends with a rat.
Oh, like Shawshank Redemption style.
No, Green Mile. That's the Green Mile.
Green Mile. Oh, Green Mile. Okay. But yeah, but also he was not supposed to be in the movie. Like, originally he had scheduling conflicts, I think, with Blue Bloods, whatever. And so, but they wrote him out of the script. But then he's like, "Oh, I can do it now." So then they wrote him back in the script. So then they're like, which I'm thinking, what was he going to do in the movie? Really, I'm like, I said, to me, but I understand why he's in the movie because you're trying to. I think I would have been kind of bummed because this is his trilogy.
Yeah.
So if he's not in the movie, at least we can see him die. Which my aunt was so shocked to see get cracked at the end with the eyes.
I have to say, he must have lobbied to have the most spectacular death in the series because, like, I've seen it up to Jigsaw now, and no death in this series has been as spectacular as Matthews's was because he's standing there, he's on the block, the timer runs out, and the pendulums come down and they swing and they crush his head like a grape, and I'm just sitting there like, bro, that is nuts. I'm sure at the Wahlberg house he's like, yeah, Mark, you might have had all those award-winning performances, but I got the most spectacular death in the Saw franchise. So what you got?
And he's also a new kid on the block.
That's true. But yeah, the way Matthews goes out is just spectacular. But yeah, I wish they did more with them. I guess that's my only complaint.
There are things I do not like about like this movie, but like I think that one thing is I like how if the time would have hit 0, nothing would have happened. Like that was literally was supposed to free them. That was literally the door is what killed him. He opens the door, and then all of a sudden the ice comes out because all he has to Donnie Wahlberg's like, "Don't open the door." He shot him trying to stop him. Because they look up there, you're like, if that door opens, you're fucking dead. Like, that guy's like, I would not open. I hope nobody opens that door. To which he's like, all they have to do is that when it hits 0 is hit that button. And I'm just like, first off, I'm like, I would be more impressed that he figured out the location. That's my biggest thing is like, he figured out the location. I understand the FBI agent Strahm figures it out, and it's incredible. Well, it's not incredible because he's an FBI agent. He figures it out because he looks at it as though they're all business partners. The lawyer that's missing is the old business partner, and this is the location they built together, so this makes sense. And Hoffman was abducted, even though he really wasn't. He was just, but him figuring it out still bothers me. Like, how the hell did he figure that out? It wasn't like Jigsaw left him with breadcrumbs. I would have made more sense if he would have left him with like, clues, or if he would put the location of the address on the back of the card or something, it would have made more sense. But instead, it's like he has a G, and you figured it out because G must be Gideon. Oh, Gideon is like you just said. Like he's really he really is like what's the what's it called? Murder on the Orient Express detective.
Hercule Poirot.
He is really a Hercule Poirot. He really is. For that, I'm like. And which also he gets shot and then he dies on camera. Like I'm like, are you serious? He's shot. If I was Hoffman, I would snap his neck or something because it's like this dude might survive and he might rat me out.
Yeah, And Rig has shown that like getting like shot is like no qualms to him. Like it's like he's gonna work through it. So it's like he did a half measure pretty much.
Like he just dies. He just goes like, "Oh, I'm shot." I feel like it was like, and he just looks up. I could have swore that Hoffman, what he should have did was just strangle him or something. That way, when he strangles him, he could, like, that way he can't fight back and then he dies. I'm sure there probably would have. There's probably a cut out there where Hoffman does kill him some other way. Or
It's like
Hoffman.
it's like in the complete works of William Shakespeare abridged, where they do Romeo and Juliet, in the part where Mercutio gets killed by Romeo, and he is like, "Oh, I am slain!" and he like sticks the blade under his arm, and the guy just shrugs and he walks off stage.
I got shot. I am so shot. Do you understand how shot I am? You're shot in the shoulder, bro. Like, really, like, it's not even that big of a deal. Like, Danny Glover had his throat slit, and you thought he was gonna die. He had his throat slit, and he survived. Okay,
Only to
you
then
got
get
shot.
shot at
Okay,
only to then get shot at the end of that movie.
yeah, true. Does not fare well with cops that get shot in this movie. You get shot and you're a cop, that's a death sentence. Saul, if you get shot, you're dead. I mean, Sam Jackson can vouch for that.
All right, well, I feel like we can bring this one to an end. I think I would give it a good rating. I feel like I'd put it on equal footing as number 3. I did like this more than I expected to. Not perfect, definitely flawed, but 4 movies deep, I'm honestly kind of shocked that I'm still into these movies up to this point. So that's not nothing.
And I do like that. One thing I do like that. One thing I wanted to bring up is Jigsaw has somebody like remember in the first movie he had Zep do his bit dirty work for him. Well, Jigsaw has this piece of shit lawyer and his business partner do all his dirty work. And we haven't really had that since Saw 1. So I like that they brought that back in Saw 4 to have somebody do your dirty work for you, only to reveal that the real killer is Hoffman, and he's right there to make sure he does all his dirty work, because he's like, all you gotta do is get up and just go, and you're dead. So I thought that was pretty clever. But yeah, but I really like this movie. I really like this movie so much because it just has so many twists and turns, and I've always loved watching this movie. By the way, to lighten the tension in the movies, they always hit a fart machine, a fart trap in the movie. So whenever an actor is getting a real serious moment, the fart machine will go off, and we hear like a wah, and then the actors will start laughing and break character. And they do that in every single movie. The producers would do that. So, for instance, there's a scene where Riggs on like the bloopers or whatever or it might be on the making of Saw 4, is walking like this with his gun, and he's like this. All of a sudden, you hear wah, and he just starts laughing. He's like, and so I thought that was hilarious because they're just like they do that in every single Saw movie. It's freaking hilarious. They just had a fart machine, and all of a sudden, wow, and then they're just like, I think that's hilarious. And this movie is really fun. I really enjoy this movie. I honestly think that people should watch these movies. I know some people think, oh, you only should watch the first 2 or 3. I've seen someone that is in our circle that's like, oh, you should only watch the first 3. The rest suck. And I'm like, no, they don't. There's really good things in each movie. But I think Saw 1 through 4 I feel like Darren Lynn Bousman is the best director out of all the directors of the Saw films. And that's no disrespect to James Wan, but I'm saying James Wan directed Saw 1, but even he has said, I have issues with that movie, James Wan said, because it was my first movie and I was an independent director. I have not made anything. And he said there's mistakes in that movie that I wish, if anything, I could. He said he don't like watching the movie because of that. And so Darren Lynn Bousman, I think, kind of had music videos and stuff. He was more experienced when he came on Saw 2. And you could tell it's a night and day difference between the two, because he had more experience, so he's different. Even though James Wan has since become a fantastic director in his own right. And so I think, I do think Darren Lynn Bousman is the better director of all the Saw films, because he kind of understands the formula, and he kind of created some ideas for the formula. By the way, the transition shots are fantastic. How like a woman's thrown through the glass and then like he transitions into somebody walking into a room. or how Jigsaw's looking at a glass and then it transitions into Strom talking to his wife in the interrogation room. That to me is transition shots are fantastic, and I love that. But yeah, if I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it a solid B+.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely agree with you on that. But I passed off to all of you watching. What was your thoughts on Saw 4? Comment down below. Let us know. Love to read what you have to say. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on. It's a privilege to do any video with you. Outside of small talk on this channel, what have you got going on your channel?
Well, this drops Friday, so I got Strays reviewed Friday. I just watched Strays. I enjoyed that movie. It's freaking hilarious. I watched that last weekend, so I'm gonna have a review for that Friday. And small talk, I got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game I'm playing, and so I got a review for that dropping Thursday.
Yeah, Jacob's channel will be linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. And as for this channel, the road to Saw 10 continues next Friday with my unfortunate coverage of Saw 5, the only one that I outright dislike, but more on that next week. But as for this video, if you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, click the bell to allow notifications so when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. For Jacob Collins, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you in the next one. You have a good night.